Be careful of the time commitment. Set up your guardrails. Do an initial 30 minutes for the sake of, I say yes to everybody on LinkedIn just because that's our ethos here is someone reaches out to you, take the 30-minute call. You never know if it's a connection you might need or want for something else. And if it's an ask for further engagement, either work with someone like you, work with someone like me, or do it on your own. Be careful there. There's some pitfalls you can run into there, but go for it. And you can negotiate an equity position, a consultation fee, and see if it's something you want to do.
Welcome to Startup Physicians. Please like and follow our show to join our community of physicians who are reimagining healthcare delivery.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Startup Physicians. This is your host, Dr. Alison Curfman, and I'm excited to have a guest today who is an ER physician, Dr. Kevin Baumlin. Thanks, Kevin, for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
So, some of you have heard me talk about going to different industry conferences, and recently I attended the health conference, the HLTH conference, which traditionally has not had a lot of physician involvement, but over the past couple of years, we've seen a lot of opportunities for physicians to get involved. And so one of the things that I was doing when I was at health was connecting with people that had booths on the floor that work with startups and have a number of portfolio companies. And there's many incubators and accelerators and other programs that have a number of companies that they support. And so that's how Kevin and I first connected because of the work he does with a company called the Science Center. And I'm going to let him tell you more about that. Because I think what we can talk about today is going to be all the ways that he sees there being value for physicians to work with these companies, because he certainly supports a number of portfolio companies and many, many more in his network, and hears a lot about the need. So, Kevin, I would love if you could just start by telling us a little bit about your background and your career journey.
Sure. My name's Kevin. I've been an emergency physician for more than 30 years. I practiced at Mount Sinai Hospital in New York and then was chair of emergency medicine at Pennsylvania Hospital here in Philadelphia, where I am now. Along the way, I also became board certified clinical informaticist and was the associate CMIO at Mount Sinai. Always had an interest in information science and was like the go-to guy. So became the EHR implementation guy. That's kind of like where a lot of us got kind of pigeonholed into. And became very interested in all different areas of information and technology. Most recently, I decided to run for U.S. Senate.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
More doctors need to do that.
Yeah, because I wanted to make a difference. Seeing patients is great. After doing it for 30 years during COVID, it was a lot. It was a real lot. And a lot of us were thinking, what else can we do? What are the other things we can do, as many of I think you all who are listening are feeling right now, actually. Making a difference on a federal legislative level, I think, is important. Making a difference here at the Science Center, which just happened because I gave a talk on the U.S. healthcare system, and the CEO of the Science Center came up to me afterwards, gave me her card, invited me to lunch, and said, "We're not running for Senate. Would you consider come working at the Science Center?" And I was
That's great.
Doing what? And I hadn't really entertained being a chief medical affairs officer at a not-for-profit working with startups. I was just trying to do a new career path and make a difference. And a couple months after dropping out of the race, I met with Tiff and started working here as a consultant, and then increased my portfolio, and I love it. And it's a little different than being an entrepreneur. I worked in a software company. I wrote educational software early on in my career, 30 plus years ago. Any of you remember C and C++ and Pascal, like a long time ago. During my professional career, I also opened up urgent care centers, brick and mortar urgent care centers. So I knew about business and trying to make a business plan and building a build and mortar business, which is different than a startup. And I also knew that doing that is very hard. Being here at the Science Center, I get to work with and mentor a lot of startups, a lot of great ideas, a lot of incredible scientists. but I don't have to worry about providing my own health insurance and benefits and salaries and managing people. And after managing people for 30 years, the one thing I knew the next phase of my career I didn't want to do is manage people. So it's a little different than those of you who are thinking about being in startups. It's a different kind of angle and perspective, I think.
Very, very cool. And I could tell by your background that you're someone who just takes all the opportunities that come your way. It's interesting that it could just be thrown in there in your background that like, oh yeah, and I ran for Senate. Like that is a big deal. And I think that more doctors need to be willing to take action, even if it's not running for Senate. It's don't just think about something, go do it. And you might not succeed in the sense of getting what the thing was, but you learned so much through that experience and probably made a ton of connections that's just launching you into your next phase. So that's one takeaway I had from your intro.
No, I think it's a great, I always say to people, it's like riding a wave. You paddle out and you ride the wave, and sometimes you crash and sometimes it's a really good ride, and running for Senate was great. I learned a lot, met a lot of people, and here's where I am, and I love what I do. And I'm so much happier, and no one's dying, it's great.
Yeah.
I work regular hours, no nights, no weekends. As an emergency physician, you're always working nights and weekends, and having Christmas off the whole week between Christmas and New Year's. Who has that? Who does
well,
that?
you certainly put in your time. So
Right.
I think you definitely deserve that. There are two things that I would love for people to get out of this conversation that we're having. One is for people that may be aspiring founders and maybe don't even know that they're an aspiring founder. There's someone who has a lot of ideas and then constantly has the idea or the mindset that like, oh, I couldn't do that. I wouldn't have the slightest idea where to start. And then two, for physicians that want to be advisors and consultants to startup companies, what is the need in the space? So first, I'd love to start by talking about these aspiring founders, because I remember being in that place where I was like, I know I have an idea. I know I have a concept that could be valuable. I wouldn't know the slightest bit about where to start. I don't have any connections, even in startups at all. I don't understand the language they're using. And so in my journey, one of my first steps was actually that we pitched to a local startup accelerator, which was a nonprofit. A lot of people don't know that these exist. And we were accepted into their coaching program. So, I mean, it didn't cost us anything. We had to prove that we had a good idea and like we're good potential founders. But they gave us resources and they gave us connections. And when this huge opportunity came to me, I had like a sounding board. I had someone that I could like go to talk about it. So can you describe a little bit about the Science Center and what you guys do?
Yeah, we're a University City area of Philadelphia and West Philadelphia. We're a 6-year-old not-for-profit. We do programming from STEM education through Founders Fellowship, which is for PhD and MD students, through what we call the Capital Readiness Program, which is for founders that have already raised 0.5 to 1.5 in capital. We don't really work with the early incubator stage companies. We encourage people to do NSF I-Corps if they have an idea and they really want to do their customer discovery work.
Can you stop for a second and describe that? Because that's a really interesting pathway too.
Yeah, the NSF I-Corps program is for people like docs who have a great idea and really need to understand what is business planning and what is customer discovery. Meaning, what do people really want? What your idea is? And sometimes the answer is yes, and sometimes the answer is no. And so if you go through that journey and then maybe get grant funding around that, or if you're coming out of academia, if you've already done the early work and you're writing grants, be it an SBIR, NIH SBIR grant, or other types of government funding or other type of funding, be it DARPA funding or ARPA-H funding, once you're exploring the funding sources and starting to get government grants, then you're ready to come into one of our programs. There's lots of programs out there. We happen to be in the physically located in Philadelphia, but we accept companies from all over the country and all over the world. We also have a different program for companies, a U.S. market access program for companies coming internationally. And what we do is we prepare them. We give them the toolkit, if you will, in order to do their next round of funding, be it their seed round or their A round, which is a whole language that you have to learn when you come into this space. I was like, what? What's A, B, and C and seed? And like, what are those things? And what does it all mean? And, it really doesn't have anything to do whether this EKG is a subtle acute MI or not. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, but we've learned jargon before. We all had to take pharmacology as med students and probably were totally overwhelmed. But now you could hear any drug class and you're like, oh, that sounds like an antibody,
Right.
So you learn the lingo.
Yeah, I think the lingo learning was intense for me. Like the first year, I was like, "What?" you know. Um,
But people are nice. They'll explain it to you. I mean, I think that, I think a lot of people have fear about entering a space that they don't have any experience because they don't want to think they're dumb or, an intern again. But some of these things, like if you could just go in with humility and recognize that there's some things that you're really, really, really good at and very much an expert on. And there's others that you don't know how to do at all. And it's fine. And you can learn.
yeah, you have to really eat a little humble pie. I mean, I came out of being a chair of a department, running a large budget, a lot of prestige and power, to like being a consultant in this non-for-profit, being like, what? But I quickly realized that I have knowledge in places where other people didn't. I am the doc,
Exactly.
I'm the doc in the house, so when there's a medical question, a science question, they come to me, and that feels good. You feel valued. And then I get to value them and what they bring to the table, especially the capital team and the government team, because I knew research as a researcher, getting American Heart Association funding, NIH funding, CMMI funding, but I didn't know anything about SBIRs or STTRs, the commercialization pathway.
Can you, I'd love for you to even describe that a little bit, because I know this is a lot of acronyms. I too have been in academics. I have gotten NIH grants. I have been in the academic research pathway of getting grants. But can you tell me what SBIR is? And then the NSF, that's the National Science Foundation. And they have this I-Corps program. So these are things that would be before they would get to you at the Science Center. But look, they sound like good pathways for aspiring founders to consider.
Yeah, NSF Core is for early entrepreneurs. I run this fellowship program for 5 fellows that are in longevity science, healthy longevity, actually. And we encourage them to do I-Corps before they come to us, even though they're in their PhD or master's program. It really does teach you the basic principles of small business, and it's free, and you apply and you do your coursework and you come out of it thinking yeah or no, which is fine, and then they come to a fellowship program like my program. There's other fellowship programs out there. Mine's unique because I pay people $50,000 a year, which is great. So they can continue in their PhD program and get a little supplemental while we teach them not just healthy longevity, but also entrepreneurship. The SBIR, STTR are mechanisms for scientists, mostly for scientists, to form their LLC and then get money to continue their science and explore the beginning of their business. And what the emphasis now, I think, with this administration and the end of the last one, is you really have to think about your commercialization plan. Think about the milestones you're gonna meet and why and how you're gonna meet them, and put that and think about that. Include that in your grant. And we do training in this here at the Science Center, so we help young scientists / entrepreneurs apply for it right, and then help them administer these types of grants if they want our help. We're here to help, and we do that service for free as well. So we're not the only ones, but we're probably the best. No, I don't know. We're the best. I don't know if we're the best.
You certainly had a great team that I met at the conference. And there's so many resources like this because there's huge value in creating successful entrepreneurs, right? And why, I know that we're in a phase where, research funding is kind of questionable, but it is good for the country and the economy to have successful entrepreneurs, right? I mean, it expands the economy.
Absolutely. And what we do here at the Science Center is not just have the programs, but we're the connector. So we connect to payers, we connect to regulatory, we connect to health systems. Because I come from health systems, these are my peeps, and I know them and can talk their doctor language and their administrator language.
And they'll respond to emails from you if you
And
reach
they
out. They'll be like,
will.
"Oh, hey, Kevin, yeah, I'll
Yeah,
totally
let's come
talk to
on.
Kevin."
And that's a different thing because people in the along the administrative track, it becomes a really kind of small and lonely space, actually, and your circle becomes narrower and smaller. But innovators think they may want to talk to the CEO, the COO, but really they don't. They really need a champion, and then that champion needs to talk to their chair. And then they need to go up the ladder to have an administrative champion. So there's a series of champions along the way in the healthcare system. If that's what you need, and sometimes that's not what you need. Sometimes you need to go get a sale. Like in every startup is different in what their exact needs set are. And that's what we help sort out. And that's what I do. And I also work with a lot of docs who say, I think I want to be in that space a little bit, maybe, and explore what that means to them. And some of the things you do are similar to some of the things I do, and sometimes different.
Yeah, absolutely. And now that so that's a lot of good information for people that could be interested in starting their own startup. It sounds like there's many resources out there to start exploring, see if your concept has any good viability, and then could work with a nonprofit like yours or many, many others to get additional support so that you're not doing this on your own. Like, I think that entrepreneurship can feel very lonely and overwhelming. I often feel like there are some things that like I just don't know. Like, I don't have the slightest idea. And I actually feel like I'm really well equipped to go get help because of my background as an emergency physician. It's like we know what we handle in the ER, and then everything else we know who to consult. Like, we know who to call to get help. I don't need to know everything about every specialty, but I have to know how to escalate and how to get help. So that is one takeaway that I want people to have, is that there are pathways, there are countless of these nonprofits that exist solely to help promising entrepreneurs be successful. And it doesn't always mean investing like $100,000 of your own money to get an idea off the ground.
No, I think that's an important message too. These programs are free. That's why we exist. The Science Center in particular is unique that we were a real estate play in Philadelphia, so we built buildings. We have commercial revenue, and then we sold the buildings, so we have a fund. So we're stable. So which is kind of unique in this world. So we're not dependent on fees for our startups to pay us when they come in. So it allows us to be a bit more flexible and address the needs as the climate changes, which is, when I was looking for a place to work and have my next new career was like important to me. I didn't want to be like at a place and then another place and another place, kind of thing. I wanted a background and I surround myself with experts who can fill in the gaps of knowledge that I don't have. It's like when you choose to work as an emergency physician, when you choose to work in a hospital, you want to know you have good specialty backup, right? It's the same kind of thing, like you want to, if you're going to engage in a not-for-profit who's going to help your entrepreneurial journey, you want to engage a place that has a stable foundation that's surrounded by experts, that has really good connections to not just the health systems, but also to the payers and the business entrepreneurial experts that you'll need along the way in your journey. And that's what we do. We're the intermediary and holding all those pieces together.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so in your role, supporting all these different entrepreneurs, I know you also talked about being able to be a connector and navigate the healthcare system for people that have no idea how it might work on the inside. But you also have visibility to other needs of all of these different portfolio companies. And the fact that you work with a lot of scientists and not necessarily always with physicians, I think you have a really unique viewpoint on what these companies need from doctors. And I know we started our conversation earlier before we recorded about things like fractional CMO roles and advisors and advisory boards. And I'd love if you could elaborate a little bit on where you see the greatest needs, because I know a lot of people that listen to this podcast have an interest in maybe just expanding a little bit of what they do, keeping their job, but doing some advisory work on the side, but they might not know what that looks like or if they're qualified. So I'd love, with your great perspective on all these portfolio companies you support, to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, there's lots of different ways. I come from large academic places where you didn't really talk to vendors and you didn't really talk to entrepreneurs. It was kind of discouraged, in fact. But times have changed, and in two major ways you can think about it. You could be as a science, you could stay in academia behind the wall, if you will, and engage entrepreneurs who have a new product and do a clinical trial and be a site for that clinical trial. And therefore, how does that work? You could write a grant and you could write the funding for that product into that grant. So you get exposure to the entrepreneurial world, something you're thinking about, but it's somebody else's idea. That's a great way to start. And then you could, if it's your idea, you can explore writing not just being an R1 or a CMMI grant. You can explore an SBIR and explore that way. The other ways you can think about your talents and your knowledge and the science that you have in your head is to work with a company and be a fractional CMO or a clinical advisor. Because what the scientist who's doing the biomarker work or the device work is, they're engineers and they're smart and they're really fun to work with, but they don't know medicine, right? And they don't know the healthcare system. The other problem is that a lot of docs don't know the healthcare system either. So if you are an administrative director or an administrative role in the healthcare system, your need set is unique and different that you provide to startups as well. And it's valued because it's complicated.
Yeah, like how do you get to the right person? Who is the decision maker? What are all the layers? That's definitely complicated.
Like, who's the COO of a large department in the healthcare system? What role do they play? What's revenue cycle management and how does it actually work? And what's the difference between revenue and reimbursement? Like, all these complex things that I know just because I've done it for all these years. Startups have no idea. They really don't. And they kind of quote like this knowledge about a CPT code, and you're like, no, that's not how it works. You know what I mean? Just because you have a code doesn't mean a payer is going to pay against that. Right.
And it's funny because there's certain things that I feel like we think are common knowledge, and they're really not.
They're not.
Like, I was working with a company recently that has a physical product, and they hadn't really explored marketing directly to emergency departments. And when I described to them what it means to go through like a triage process and then like how a patient moves through the ER to either disposition of home or inpatient, they were like, whoa, I had no idea that's how that worked. And they could all of a sudden see ways that their product could, support different needs in the healthcare system. And things that we think are obvious, they don't necessarily know.
Yeah, and the question is, how do we as docs be a better part of it? I think one thing about health, circling back to your message about health, was there are more docs there and more nurses there. I engage with the clinical community more, and we all need to contribute. So all this money being spent trying to make money off the healthcare system, not only can we be a part of it, but we can decrease the cycle times, right? We can decrease the cycle time from idea to fully commercialized product to a company making money. Why? Because they're not going to make mistakes that we know they're making along the road because they never asked us, right? Go ask clinicians, go ask a frontline nurse. They'll tell you, and how can we be a part of putting those clinical teams together to advise along the way? Because the goal is to improve healthcare. The goal is the same as when we were seeing patients on the floor and the tens of thousands of patients I've seen in my career. We want to improve the lives of others, but can we do it in a different way? By helping entrepreneurs, is this a gratifying career path? It's funny because someone was telling me the other day, is like, you didn't make it to the Senate, but you're actually helping. You're putting forth. I have a company that's doing cancer screening called Spotted Early. I don't know if I'm allowed to mention names, but they're doing.
Oh yeah, no, that's fine.
It's called Spotted Early. They're a company from Tel Aviv, and you breathe into a mask and they process it, and these beagles smell cancer 97% of the time.
Wait, right? Who smells cancer?
The dogs.
You said, I thought you said beagles. I was like, wait, is that what he really said?
Yeah, yeah. And they just had
That's
a
crazy.
$27 raise. They're doing good. They're going to be full commercialized product, probably 26 by the end of
Wait, so
2026.
they just have like a fleet of beagles as the
Train,
core of their
yeah.
product?
Yeah. It's
Well,
they went
that's
viral.
very
They're all
interesting.
over the internet now. It's great. And I read their application when I first started here at the Science Center. I'm like, this is so cool. I want to work with this company because how many times as an ear doc have we all diagnosed cancer, stage
Yeah.
4 cancer in patients?
Yep.
I want that to never happen again. I have like 4 companies I'm working with right now that are in early cancer detection, and I feel like I'm making a difference, not just on one.
That's amazing. I mean, I just feel like so much of what we hear, I would have expected like early cancer detection, like we're going to use AI to get like biomarkers or gene, blah, 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 whatever. But it's like, this is a totally different approach. We're just going to use some dogs. Like that's a
Well,
totally different approach.
think about it. Then we're going to use the dogs and their PET scans to train the AI, right? So it's a
Yeah.
different way of thinking how to
Oh, wow.
use large language models and how to use the power of AI next generation. Like, I love the way we can think of different angles at problems. And now I get to talk to people from all different backgrounds, from chemosensory people to engineers to like all these different people. And it's fun, because your brain thinks, and I'm old now, so I got to work my brain, and or else I'll be like not able to use it, right? The muscle you have to use like any other, right?
Yeah. So what would you say to people that, you're talking about ways to get involved in things that you see as needs for the companies that you support and companies in your network. And one of the first things you said was fractional CMO. Most people who are like in a more traditional environment are like in a super hierarchical place where like there's so many rungs away from a C anything that they're probably accustomed to think like there is no way I could ever be a C-suite anything. And obviously these startups only have a few people, so it's not like you have all that hierarchy and bureaucracy. But what would you say to people that are like, well, I wouldn't know how to be a CMO or a fractional CMO?
Go see Alison Curfman and take her course. I would tell them.
I did
Or,
not tell you to say that.
or be a clinical advisor to a company. Reach out to someone like me or to you and say, hey, are any companies looking for a practicing ear doc or looking for a practicing neurologist that are working on products in that space? And maybe I could do free advisory role or for a little bit of equity or for a little bit of a little bit of side gig money. And explore. It's like exploring any other new profession. You're not going. Don't expect you're going to get high payment for it first, but you're going to learn and then see where you can gain the learning from. If you're someone who spent 30 years in academic medicine and been on an executive level, I spent on hospital executive team 2 years as well. You offer different sets of talents and different sets of skills, but companies need frontline docs too. They offer frontline information. And you could also start by, letting yourself known to people who put together events, like advisory committees and advisory groups. I'm sure you do some of this stuff. You source people for this. Be an advisor to an event where drug companies or others come in and ask you questions. There's all kinds of these things happening, and you have to decide if it's a place where you feel comfortable. If it's an avenue, a side gig, different than reviewing cases for lawyers, for instance. Some people like that's their side gig and they can do that. Like I tried that and I have a really hard time criticizing my colleagues, even when I read the case and I know they're wrong. Like I just didn't, that's a side
Right.
gig.
It's just not the path you want to take. And I agree with you that being an advisor first is a great way to get started. And I have never moved into more of like a fractional CMO role without doing advisory work first. That's what I pretty much always suggest to people is, yeah, lay the foundation and the groundwork for like, yeah, I'd love to escalate to that if it's a good working relationship, but get started as an advisor and it's very low risk and it's low stakes. You don't have to put your name on the company. And there is a lot of need. So I think that there's so many opportunities. You've given a lot of really concrete examples of the sorts of things that companies need. you're on the inside, you're somebody who sees what people are asking for and what industry wants and needs. And I feel like sometimes people don't believe me when I'm like, no, there are so many companies that could use advisors. And then a bunch of people that actually did come to health, they walked around, they were like, oh, wow, like everyone wants advisors. So they just need to believe us that there's a ton of opportunity out there.
Yeah, they don't necessarily want to pay for them.
It's true. And I think that,
Right.
the mechanism that you're talking about, that for a really early stage, if you've never done this before, and it's a really early stage company, there is a definite opportunity to create a pathway for more of a knowledge exchange. And then you're equipped and you're experienced. You can go find the ones that can pay you.
Yeah, and advice I would give too is be careful of the time commitment. Set up your guardrails. Do an initial 30 minutes for the sake of I say yes to everybody on LinkedIn just because that's our ethos here is someone reaches out to you, take the 30-minute call. You never know if it's a connection you might need or want for something else. And if it's an ask for further engagement, either work with someone like you, work with someone like me, or do it on your own. Be careful there. There's some pitfalls you can run into there. But go for it. And you can negotiate an equity position, a consultation fee, and see if it's something you want to do. It might
Yeah.
not be. It could be.
It's true. And there's different types of consulting that I used to do that I just don't do anymore because I didn't like it. But
Right.
you learn a lot about what you do like and where you can really add value. So as we're wrapping up, I would love for everyone to be able to reach out to you, Kevin. I know we will put your LinkedIn in the show notes, and then the Science Center. Can you tell us what your webpage is if people want to check that out?
Oh, it's sciencecenter.org. And it's a great resource, all one word. We put up all of our applications for all of our programs there. We also have great work we do with middle school and high school kids in STEM education, which I think is so important that we expose our kids and our youth to the world of STEM so that they will be scientists. We physically are in West Philadelphia, so we are in the middle of an underserved community, and we can't forget that we can give back in other ways. As most of my emergency medicine colleagues have a really do good thing that they're all about. So think about that too, and how you can give back to education programs for middle school and high school kids, because that work is rewarding as well.
That's amazing. Well, thank you so much, Kevin, for joining me and giving all of this great knowledge. And for those listening, we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to Startup Physicians. Don't forget to like, follow, and share.